All right. I want to thank you, John, for joining us today. John Sovec is here to share about speaking, and he is in private practice in Pasadena. In fact, I met you at a camp conference that you were speaking at. So I think it's totally appropriate you're here to talk about speaking today. So thanks for joining.
What we met was almost 4 years ago now at the camp conference in San Diego, I think it was.
Oh my goodness. And we've stayed in touch all this time. And I met you because you were speaking, and look at the relationship that's built from that. So thank you for joining us today and sharing what you know with other clinicians, because you're so passionate about what you do. And I really love that about you.
Thank you.
So tell everybody a little bit about your practice, who you are, what your focus is, and then we'll talk about how you got into speaking and why.
Okay, so I'm actually located up here in Pasadena, California, and my specialty is working with teens, but I have a real primary focus on working with gay and lesbian teens and their families during the coming out process. And I got attracted to working with this particular population right after I came out of school, because what I realized is that there were not a lot of people doing this particular work.
Right.
And I know for myself, I'm an openly gay man. As a clinician, I'm very comfortable with talking about that with my clients. And I know my experience of coming out was really easy. My partner's was not. And in finding that out, it really honed in the idea that the people who are out there in the front lines, teachers, educators, clinicians, therapists, all need to know this information so they can really be there if a client has that conversation with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to also emphasize that you built a practice as an intern very, very quickly, correct?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. And so I think your story is very encouraging to people starting in practice as well. And I think there is something behind, where your story and your niche align really ignites your passion as well, and it makes it very evident.
It does, very much. And for me, it's bigger than just building my practice. It is about a message that I'm trying to get out into the world as well.
Yeah, you're making a change, a difference in a culture and in individual lives as well.
I hope so.
So tell me about speaking and how it's really, how you got into it, why you speak, and what you speak on.
Well, it's been interesting because I've actually had a background in speaking for quite a while. I've worked in the HIV and AIDS community for over 25 years now. Mm-hmm. And my first speaking work actually started in that field. I worked with caregivers and professionals on teaching them how to understand the grief and loss that was going on, especially during the early phases of the AIDS epidemic. Mm-hmm. So I had already had that niche built up. When I decided to go to school, everyone assumed that I would go right into working in the HIV field, and I have to tell you, I was a little bit burned out at that time. Mm-hmm. And so I started working with teens, and that opened up this knowledge about wanting to work with gay and lesbian teens. Mm-hmm. And it initially began with an understanding that there weren't a lot of people out there doing that, and it was really important for me to get that information out. And so what I looked at is starting to create a presentation that was very interactive, very hands-on, and was more skill-based than lecture. And what I found for myself is that's a style that works really effective for me. I talk with people, not at them. And what that's helped me to do is build a reputation as the go-to person. Mm-hmm. So I do trainings for a lot of agencies. I just did one for Vision Teens last month, and I travel a lot. I do a lot of writing on this as well, too. Mm-hmm. And then the thing that's exciting is because of that, it's built some momentum. And a few years ago, I actually was invited to be on the Ricky Lake Show as their gay and lesbian teen expert. Mm-hmm. And I came on the show and had a great episode. And this is the new show, not the old show. So she's all grown up now and really presented some great stuff. And so it was a beautiful opportunity to get that information to a national market.
Right. So in starting with getting your message out there, it's opened up other doors, such as
media. It has. Mm-hmm. And I think the point is that having a clear point of view and a message really helped me to build this pretty quickly. Because I was so passionate about it, I wanted to get this information out to the world.
Right. And I think that's a key point for anyone watching this, right? Mm-hmm. one of the biggest aspects, we were talking before I started recording about the need for having passion, because that is where the impact really lies.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, and one of the things that I find a lot of people see as a roadblock to giving presentations is this idea that they feel they have to know every single thing about the topic. And my suggestion is find a topic you're passionate about, and learn your point of view on it, and then present that.
Awesome.
And your passion will carry you through and will make you hungry to have more information.
Right.
You know, every time I present, I purposely go and I do a little bit of research and bring something new to the presentation. I just don't do the same presentation over and over.
I love
and
that.
what's fascinating too is that when people from the audience ask me questions, that also excites me to bring in new thought processes to the presentation for future groups.
Right. So instead of being, insecure and intimidated by it, you use that as fuel to become even better and more dynamic in your work.
I do. And one of the exciting things that I got to witness early on was watching a fellow presenter of mine. She's an amazing, amazing presenter. She works for the Pasadena Business Alliance. And she got asked a question by an audience member, and she did not know the answer. And instead of trying to fake it, what she said was, I don't know the answer to that, but I'm curious too, and I'll look it up and I'll email you, so talk to me afterwards.
That's great.
And I thought that was so brilliant because it took away that pressure to have to know everything.
Right.
And I think taking that pressure away makes it so much easier to do presentations.
Right. The other thing you touched on too, I think is important, I wanted to ask you more about, is your style of presentation. How do you, because you are, for those that don't know you, are just you're outgoing and dynamic and just so warm and easy to be around. So, some people feel more introverted, some people, we all have different personalities. So what kind of tips do you have for helping people with their presentation style?
Well, I would say the first thing to do is understand what your personal strengths are. And whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, we all have our own personal strengths. So if you tend to be a quieter presenter, then you might present to smaller groups and share with them from your point of view. For you, it might be something where you do more factual presentation. Because of my personal style, I tend to do very, very involving, the audience. I always say this at the beginning of my presentations. I could sit here and talk to you guys for an hour, but I would probably bore myself. So I need you guys to ask the questions and tell me the experiences that you're having. And the thing that's really beautiful about that particular statement is even as an introvert, you could use that same style as a way to do what you do in the room. Because whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, you have a style that you do as a therapist, that you use in the room. Whether you're a coach, a therapist, a psychologist, that you have a style you already do. So build on that. I wouldn't want anyone to have to copy me as their style of presentation. What I would encourage them to do is find what matters to them and then speak from that point of view. And the other thing that I think is so cool, and I've shared this with a few people who have asked me about presentations. That whole biochemical thing, that anxiety and excitement are the same exact chemical experience in our bodies? It's just a simple reframing. What if you're not anxious? What if you're actually excited about sharing this information? Use the reframe. We teach other people to do it. Use it for ourselves.
I think that's always the lesson, right, of what we teach and then living out what we teach. It's important. So would you say that speaking is for anyone and everyone?
I personally believe, yes, that anyone can do it.
Yeah.
I do. I think it is about finding your personal style. And maybe when you're building it, look at the idea, as we talked about earlier, what are you passionate about? What's a topic that has a lot of meaning for you? And the truth of the matter is, for an hour-long presentation, you have about 3 major talking points. And once you've got those 3 talking points, that you're able to build from there. And that's where the conversation starts. Some people might want to have PowerPoint slides as a way to ease and take the pressure off of them being the center of attention. Some people might do an adult learning style where they use, the newsprint and write ideas on the board. It's about going to other people's presentations and reacting to what you enjoy. Because you're going to discover, because I'm going to present different than you're going to present. That's going to be different than whoever is listening is presenting. So go out, see other people talk, and notice what you like. And that's probably what you're going to radiate with when you do presentations.
A great point, too, about the 3 talking points. I think when I first started early on, I would like cram as much as I could in there. And that was out of my own insecurity and probably anxiety of like, I want it to be valuable. And over the time I've learned having some restraint is actually a good thing. You know, it allows room for more creativity amongst the audience and space, and just an hour it's not a lot of time to digest information, so make it simple and easy instead of cramming it all in. And that's along the lines of what you're saying about being an expert, you know. That way you don't have to jam in all the statistics and everything like that. You just got to know your point of view. I love that.
Well, it's also when you go see someone present and they have PowerPoint and they have like slides that have like 4,000 studies like delineated and APA styled, and it's in like 11 font and you can barely read it. That's that same type of information overload.
Yes.
And the way our brains process, they cannot take in much information at one time.
Right.
And, you know, I always say, you know, most people who are listening to you are going to take in about 20 to 30% of what you actually say.
Right.
So trying to put all of that into one presentation, you're killing yourself.
Yes, and you're killing your audience. So when you, what are some of the topics you speak on specifically?
So I have 3 major presentations that I do. One of them, as we've spoken about, is working with the gay and lesbian teens, and it's really a training for professionals to understand how to work best with these kids and support them. I have a second piece that I do. There's another professional training, which is an HIV disclosure. It's a big topic right now in the HIV community, and it is really a conversation about how do you have the conversation with clients about choosing to disclose or not disclose. And then I have a third piece, which is kind of fun for me, and this is more of a corporate piece. And it's based on the ideas of overcoming procrastination. And so I've taken it out to places like I present quarterly at Pasadena City College. I've presented at corporations such as Washington Mutual and Activision and Electronic Arts. For you gaming geeks out there, you'll know what I speak. And I have to joke with you because when I speak at some of these corporate places, you would not believe the security that I have to go through to actually get to the door and do my presentation.
That's cool. So how do you feel about your diversity in that? I mean, how did you come into that place of having... Because I think sometimes people feel like, I like so many things, right? And so you've been able to hold several different things and be okay with it. So I'm curious about that aspect.
Well, for me, it really was, once again, looking at where my personal strengths were. You know, with, as I said earlier, the 25 years of background in working in the HIV and AIDS community, I had the knowledge there. And the reputation was already built before I even became a licensed therapist. The gay and lesbian teen work, once again, came out of my passion for working with teens. And the procrastination piece, it actually was developed because I was asked to create this presentation for an organization. They were looking at it for a lunch and learn. That was actually for Paramount Studios. And they had this lunch and learn series where employees of Paramount would come in and have lunch and have an hour-long presentation. And they had approached me about creating that through their HR department. And so that's where that procrastination piece began. And from there, because it was received so well, I took it and started building it a little bit more and then started marketing it out in the community.
Well, that kind of is a great segue into my next question, because I want to get into a little bit more of the nitty-gritty that people don't always talk about. How do you get speaking engagements?
So there are a couple of different channels that I use. Just like you and Miranda, I also have a virtual assistant. And for those of you who don't have one, you need to find one because they will take care of so many of the things that you don't have the time to take care of. And they're brilliant, right?
Yes. I love
them. So what we did is we've actually created an Excel spreadsheet. And this is for conferences specifically, because most conferences you do have to submit for. Right. There are a few I've been an invited speaker, but most of them you have to apply for. So what we've created is an Excel spreadsheet that has the various conferences that are going on around the U.S., and on that we have a link to the application website, and then we have the deadline, and then I have a column whether it's been submitted or not submitted and what the reaction was. So for conferences specifically, you need to do an application process. Yes. And that can be a little bit time consuming, but once you get it down, it turns into a lot of cut and paste. So that's one aspect of doing it. The thing that I love about conference speaking is it does raise my professional profile. Mm-hmm. And a few years ago, with much reluctance, I had to take on the title of being a nationally recognized expert. I didn't want to because I'm a little bit modest about that stuff. I know my energy is big, but I really had to do a transition to be able to say that and put that on my my marketing material. Mm-hmm. So in doing that now, I really am speaking on a national level. So that's for the conferences. It is a very definite application process that you have to be about 6 to 8 months ahead of time to speak at any conference. In fact, I think for the Camp California conference, they're already accepting applications for 2015, which is in the fall of next year. 2016. Okay.
Yes.
So it's about being ahead of the curve on those things.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. The other piece is marketing on a more local level.
Right.
A lot of places in any of our communities have a need for speakers. They do speakers series, whether it's through CAMPT or AMPT, who all have chapter presentations. I just sent out a letter of inquiry to all of the CAMPT local chapters, and I'm getting a response now to book speaking engagements for 2015 with the local chapters. Also within your community, a lot of bookstores offer speaking series, a lot of parenting and school series are out there. So it's about finding what's in your community. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times that information you can find either online or in your local paper. That's good. And then the third prong is what I talked about with doing the more corporate stuff. And the aspect there for me is that it's about reaching out usually to an HR person in a corporation and then engaging them, because a lot of companies do have these internal training mandates. And so you saying, I have a presentation that will fulfill some of those needs, actually helps them out. And it's just like any marketing. Sometimes you got to make a cold call and just go for it.
Thank you. I love that you just said that. Because I think there is a hesitancy, right? That's not something we're used to doing or is something talked about. But sometimes you just have to ask. Well, recently we've been contacting some well-known therapists in research to interview them. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, I don't know you, but I am going to ask. And It's turned into some interviews with names that I would have never expected, but it was a cold call. It wasn't just like, how do you build a relationship with someone that has the research institute in another country? It's hard, but you got to ask.
But it's also about understanding that you are potentially filling a need for them.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And if you can make the call based on that, this is something I can do for you.
Totally.
Rather than me asking what you can do for my side.
Always.
That is such a huge thing in making these connections.
Yes.
The other thing, too, about cold calling, there is a technique that you can use that can be really effective, which is to send a cold email.
Yes.
So send a cold email kind of talking about who you are and what you want to present on, and then follow it up about a week later saying, I sent you an email last week, I just want to follow up and see if you got it, if you had any questions for me.
Yeah. Great.
So a cold email is a great way to start an introduction, and the follow-up call then isn't as cold because you're referring to something specific.
Right. All relationship marketing is from the aspect of how may I serve you?
Right.
How can I be of service here? Because that is the win-win, and where you will feel good about the work you're doing. So let's talk about speaking for fee and no fee. Mm-hmm. And your thoughts on that, and negotiating pay and all that kind of stuff. This is something that I think a lot of people I coach are like, well, should I charge for this or not? And what should I charge? So what are your thoughts about that?
Well, Kelly, you know me pretty well.
I do.
And you know that my private practice, I'm a fee for service, and I don't have a sliding scale.
Yes.
So I'm very clear about that in my practice. Right. I have a slightly different philosophy out in the work that I do. If I'm doing a corporate gig, I have a very definite fee that I charge. And as I've been doing it more and more, I've set that fee a little bit higher.
Right.
And I always want to make sure that I'm getting at least twice what my hourly fee is, because there's time before, after, and prep. So that's where I initially based it on, but it's gone quite a bit higher than that now.
Yeah, I usually say 3 to 4 times at least. Yeah, what your hourly is. Okay. So for corporate.
That's for corporate. A lot of the trainings that I do for schools and more local agencies, I do pro bono. And part of the reason for that is, once again, it's about building community relations. I want to be the resource. So whether or not someone sends me a client, they always, at the end of my presentations, I say, if you have any questions or need anything, feel free to contact me. And if they contact me, I'm more than willing to give the time to help them through a question they may have.
You know, one of the things I tell people is that there are many other ways to give back to the world outside of a sliding scale. And this is an example of you not having a sliding scale, having a cash pay practice, full fee, that enables you to give in other ways.
Absolutely.
And it's beautiful, and I love it.
I do too. The thing about conference speaking, in most cases, you will probably get a reduction or a free conference fee, but everything else will be up to you unless you're an invited speaker, and then at that time they will actually pay for your accommodations and travel and usually a stipend.
Yes, exactly. So, all right, let's see, what else do we need to cover? What do you think the person watching right now needs to do if they've never spoken before, but they want to do this? What is their next step of action?
So the first thing I would do, and I think it's something that you guys do as well in your trainings, is find who it is you want to speak to. Imagine yourself in front of a room full of people that are there to hear about your topic. Who are they? You know, and actually kind of build that image. And then from there, take and really hone down what your topic is, and then start building your outline. And I would really suggest building this outline on the idea of having 3 main comments, 3 main ideas that you want to work from, and then letting it blossom from there. And once you have a pretty clear idea of what you would like to present, maybe at the beginning, look into your local community. Notice what's happening, you know, at I spoke for the Pasadena Business Alliance, which I had mentioned earlier. And that came because they offer a free series of monthly classes for small business owners here in Pasadena. And I saw that in the paper. So look for those local community things, and maybe for your first presentation, do it for free, and just get out there in community and start speaking. The thing that I would suggest is every single time, allow yourself absolute and 100% permission to fail, to fumble, to fall over your words, and to be foolish. Because if you can allow yourself that freedom, you'll actually present on a much more effective style.
And a more authentic style. Definitely.
Yeah. So really, if you're starting out, picture who your audience is, build 3 points of information you would want to transfer to them, and then start exploring and see who in your local community could offer you an opportunity to do a speech.
Oh my gosh. Great advice and tons of little nuggets of wisdom in here that I hope everyone's taking notes on, or they're going to replay it and listen to it over and over again. So where are you headed with your speaking now?
Well, I actually have a really cool opportunity that just came up to me. I have been asked to give a guest lecture spot at USC in their social work program on working with gay and lesbian teens. And this was an offer. They found me and enjoyed my work. And I have to tell you, I do a lot of speaking, and this one really hit me and made me do my little happy dance.
That's great. Congratulations. It's exciting.
Yeah, I do. I really am excited about it.
So if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
The best way to do it is to go through my website, which is www.johnsovec.com. Maybe you can put a link below with this.
I will. I'll put it in the link below for sure.
Perfect. Another place, if they're interested in my work with gay and lesbian teens, is www.gayteentherapy.com. So those are 2 places where you can contact me, and you can come down to USC. It's actually next Friday.
Cool.
Although I think it's a classroom situation, so maybe we can't let people in. But other than that, I'm looking at 2015. Look around. I'm going to be presenting at a lot of the local chapters of CAMFT and AMFT, and I'm also going to be presenting for Sovereign Health in their community's offerings. I think it's in February in Culver City.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing all of your wisdom with everyone, and I am happy to share you with everyone I know, because You are a wonderful person to know, and I appreciate your generosity today.
Thank you so much for providing this opportunity.
All right. Thanks, John.